named Battle of Segali, and was fought between the Ethiopian Christian army from the house of Shoa and an Ethiopian Muslim army from the house of Wallo. So the Battle of Segali is described by historians as Ethiopia's greatest battle since Adwa. Negus Mikel of Wallo was defeated by a Christian army led by Rastafari. So the point that I'm trying to make is that Rastafari, in his Christian upbringing and in his nobility, held the responsibility of protecting the Ethiopian realm. And he fought an actual battle to maintain Christianity and to defend Christianity in Ethiopia. He fought a great battle against the great Ras Michael, who became Negus Michael. Very powerful Ras indeed. But even on the battlefield, His Majesty demonstrated his Christian virtue. Rastafari stated that, quote, "Because of bloodshed among Ethiopians themselves is extremely saddening, I arranged that monks from the monasteries of Debra Libanos and Zekwala should come with their crosses to request Negus Mikel to go back to Wallo without making war." Negus Mikel totally ignored that. He instead captured those emissaries and arrest them. So you see the difference. His Majesty as a Christian leader, he was trying to be benevolent, he was trying to be kind. He didn't want to fight, he didn't want to see bloodshed. So he stretched out an olive hand to his adversary, who totally refused it, because they were bent on destroying the faith that has been in Ethiopia for millennia. So His Majesty give thanks to the Creator that His Majesty was able to mobilize the army, the Christian army, to defend the realm of Ethiopia. As emperor, he was crowned by Abuna Krilos at the St. George's Cathedral in Addis Ababa, November 2nd, 1930. And that was an illustrious and unforgettable event, cannot be forgotten. I mean, one of the greatest events in the 20th century. And if person should kind of have an understanding of the 19th, of that era, that was the height of colonialism. No black man outside of Ethiopia were considered subhumans. We were considered subhumans, and lo and behold, an African king from the line of David was being crowned, and leaders from all over Europe had was to go there and pay their homage to the black king. That event was so great. Even in the cathedral, St. George's Cathedral, which had 7 corners, 7 groups of priests gathered in 7 corners of the National Cathedral and chanted for 7 days and 7 nights. They chanted the Psalms of King David. They played drums, they played music. Abuna Krilos, which was the highest official in the Ethiopian Coptic Christian Church, presided over the event. His Majesty made pledges on that day. Importantly, what one needs to know is that for the first time in history, foreign states send their high representatives to witness the enthronement of a black man to the world's oldest dynasty that traces origin to Solomon of ancient Israel and Queen Makeda of ancient Ethiopia. King George V. King George V of Great Britain sent his son, Prince Henry, the Duke of Gloucester. King Vittorio Emanuele of Italy sent his cousin, the Prince of Udine, and France sent Marshal Franchet. It was a monumental event for colonized Africans in continental Africa and in the diaspora. Here was a monarch who symbolized ancient Africa, a kingdom with a proud tradition and history, and a church of ancient and holy and indigenous history. So this triggered great pride in Africans living in the diaspora. This event started the Rastafari movement. The Rastafari movement started in 1930, November 2. And the Pan-African movement was also mobilized. The crowning of His Majesty bring a sense of liberation in the minds of black people who were enduring slavery and colonialism and prejudice and racism. So when you see a black man crowned king and people of high stature from colonial countries paying homage. That was something very great. I can just imagine. I wish I was born in those days to get that feeling that people like Leonard Howell had. People like Nathaniel Ibert, who's one of the founding fathers of the movement, who also wrote to His Majesty for the coming of this church. And people like Dunkley, who also became an Orthodox Christian baptized by Abuna Isaac when the church came in 1970. All these virgins became conscious of them black self in 1930 when this black king was crowned in this ancient Christian church. So the whole point that I'm trying to make, this black king that was presented to the world for us to see, it was presented by the church. It was the church that presented him to us through customs and tradition from that time to this time and even to our time, right? So that is the whole point. So from the moment, speaking of Emperor Haile Selassie as a liberator, right? From the moment he took over state responsibility, he worked hard to advance the Orthodox Christian faith. And as I mentioned, he made solemn oath at that coronation. 1, he made an oath to uphold the Christian religion. 2, to uphold and administer the laws of the land for the betterment of the Ethiopian people. 3, to maintain the integrity of Ethiopia. And 4, to found schools for the development and spiritual and material welfare of his subjects. And history can attest to that fact. His Majesty was the one who opened up Ethiopia to the world. He built schools, he built airports, infrastructures, he built churches, and he modernized, he restored churches that were attacked and destroyed during the invasion of the Second Hitler-Ethiopic War. He built railway. Some of my brothers and sisters are helping me. He built highways. A matter of fact, I went on one of the highways in Shashaman. It's called King's Highway. It's right here now. Built by His Majesty. That highway brings us straight to Kenya.
It's financed by the US.
So, as a liberator as well, remember, it's because His Majesty adhered to the Christian faith so devotedly, he was empowered. His character became sacred because he was so devoted, right? He also helped to liberate the Ethiopian Tawahedo Church from under the sea of the Egyptian Coptic Church. And that is monumental. That is monumental. Because since the 4th century, when St. Athanasius appointed St. Frumentus as Ethiopia's first bishop, Abuna Salam, Ethiopia had always received a single Coptic bishop to crown her monarchs, bless her church and her altars, ordain clergies, and preside over Orthodox faithful. Emperor Johannes, who reigned 1872 to 1889, had managed to get the Coptic Pope to appoint 4 bishops for the empire, but they had died one by one with no successors appointed to their sees. The last being Abuna Matthias, who had crowned Emperor Zadi II. Rastafari Mokanen, this is even before he became emperor, argued for native-born bishops, but Egypt resisted. You know why Egypt resisted? I can tell you why. Egypt resisted because I'm going to give you a quote from His Eminence Abuna Isa. This is what Abba said. For 1,600 years, 110 Egyptian bishops have ruled the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The Egyptian bishops were paid in gold for their services, and annual Ethiopia had to pay a large sum of gold to the Egyptian Coptic. You can imagine? And Christ sent out, when Christ was sending out the apostle, he told them not to walk with a purse. But anyway, so it is believed that this wealth was to build and develop monasteries all over Egypt. So His Majesty intervention to give the church its own autocephaly. An autonomy. So he negotiated for sometimes with the Egyptian clerics, and he even threatened that he will break away all ties with Egypt if he does not get Ethiopia to be independent. Right? So finally a compromise was made, and the Coptic Abuna Krylos as Archbishop of Ethiopia and 5 Ethiopian-born bishops we were anointed to serve under him in 1928. This greatly reduced the hardship faced by the many churches across the vast country. Because sometimes when the Ethiopians go into Egypt to be consecrated, some of them died on the way by bandits and all type of thing. So His Majesty had us to intervene to eliminate that. And also, they didn't speak native Ethiopian, they speak Coptic. So His Majesty wanted his church to be independent. And that is what happened. Okay, so let me continue real quick.